All right. Hello, everyone. So before we get started, Third Place Books would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the Duwamish people and the land itself. So welcome everyone to our virtual event space. I'm seeing some familiar names in this attendee list. So hello everyone. If you know me, hi, I'm Allie. If you don't know me, I'm a bookseller at the Lake Forest Park location of Third Place Books, and I am so excited to be moderating this conversation with my dear friend, Wendy Mulhern and Susanna Maria Weiss, here to discuss time and times and half a time. But before we get into the good stuff, on behalf of all of us here at Third Place Books, I just want to quickly thank you all so much for tuning in. For those of you who may not know, we are an independent bookstore with 3 locations in the Seattle area. And as much as we miss having these events in our bookstore, it has been such a delight to expand this online program to connect readers and authors in a virtual space. So thank you all so much for tuning in. And of course, for buying books. Your support is what makes all of this possible. So if you haven't gotten your hands on a copy of Time and Times and Half a Time and you would like to, I will be linking the book in chats. If you are local, come on in. All of our locations are open. You can grab a copy right off the shelf. Or of course you can place an order online and come pick them up in store. Or if you're not local or not leaving the house, we of course ship. So go ahead and follow links that will soon be in chat over to our website. While you're on our website, I definitely encourage you to check out some of our other upcoming events. We have an exciting roster coming up in the new year, which might even include an in-person event or 2, which is very exciting. If you would like to stay in touch with our community, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly update about events and exciting releases, our online book clubs, and of course, follow us on any of the major social media platforms. We are at Third Place Books for the quickest updates and recommendations. So tonight we are here for about an hour, and towards the end, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions, which I very much hope that you do, go ahead and leave those in the Q&A box, which should be at the top or bottom of your screen. It is different than the chat box, which I can see people have already discovered. Hello, Laura. Welcome.
Yeah, glad you're here, Laura.
Everyone, I absolutely invite you to share where you're tuning in from or just say hi in chat. We always love to hear from you. When it comes time for questions, though, definitely make sure that those end up in the Q&A so we can most easily find them. As always, when you're in our chat and question spaces, please lead with kindness. And for anyone interested, there are auto-generated closed captions available from the menu at the top or bottom of your screen. Select the live transcript button to enable or disable them. They are about a generous 70% accurate. So bear that in mind. And finally, should any technical issues arise, which happens in the world of Zoom, we will work as quickly as we can to resolve those. And we appreciate your patience and understanding. Oh my gosh, Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, Seattle. Hello, everyone. Oh, hi, Kathy. So, all right. I think now it's time for us to settle in, grab your beverage of choice, get cozy, because I am so pleased to welcome artist and illustrator Susanna Maria Weiss and the poet behind Earth Whispering Press, my dear friend Wendy Mulhern. So hi, friends. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. So glad that you're giving us this opportunity.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Oh my goodness. I'm loving seeing this chat blow up. This is so much fun. Hi, everybody. So the book tonight is Time and Times and Half a Time. It's a collection of poems that was beautifully illustrated by Susanna. It's about Wendy's journey through grief after the loss of her daughter. But before we get further into the book, Wendy, I'm hoping you'll tell us a little bit about your blog and your writing process. What role does poetry play in your life?
Well, I I discovered that I was a poet kind of recently, which is funny because I also knew it all my life, but I didn't believe that you could be something that you couldn't make a living at, or at least that I couldn't make a living at. And actually, it was my daughter, Heather, who decided that she was going to be a writer. And she started to be a writer, and I started taking her to places for classes, and I started writing again and discovered that there's a thing that I call my I am, which is a sense of not just who I was trying to be, but this really settled in sense of my being, who I was, who I am as a writer. And that was just such a strong, settling, powerful thing. And I started a blog, and I also did some of the NaNoWriMos with Heather. And one time one was finishing, and I had been getting into poetry a little bit, and I decided to make a poetry blog, and I started to write a sonnet a day. And so I was definitely working with sound as well as ideas. And I branched off from sonnets and was just writing poems, still very much working with sound and imagery and all the synesthetic senses that I have at my disposal as a poet. But I found that the key thing about writing poetry was that I had to focus in on honesty. The poem had to be honest. And that meant not only did it have to be something that I knew was true, but it couldn't just be true in a theoretical, in my head sort of way. I had to really be there with that truth. And so it really helped me to get a strong sense of what my honesty of the day was. And sometimes it was metaphysical, sometimes it would be about relationships, sometimes it would be about the weather, whatever.
I think like a huge part of the blog is that it happens almost every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of makes sense that the topics range so much.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about this particular collection and how it came to be?
Sure. Yeah, well, so as you mentioned, we lost our daughter in 2018, and I think that everybody can feel that that's an unimaginable situation. I think everybody's deep loss is unimaginable to other people. And I think people might also feel that the loss of a child has a particularly deep, life-shattering, I would say, thing going on. And since I was writing a poem a day, those poems that I was writing through that time tracked right through that experience and made those tracks so that looking back, it was a very intimate account of what I was feeling and experiencing through that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there a poem you'd like to kind of start us off on as we get into the book?
Yeah, I want to start off with the first poem, which is called Morning Song. And this poem I wrote a little bit later than a lot of the first, a lot of the poems were just in the first months. And this was kind of, I think with grief experiences, it cycles back around. And this was almost a year after Heather's passing, called Morning Song. I have a bag of tears somewhere in my head. I feel it jiggle with the bumps along the road. Maybe I'll take it out and drink some down, water my memories. Oh, my sweetest love, I miss you in my future. I miss your presence too. The water comes and takes away my footprints. Something like that sometime may take me too. I found a feather amidst my sobs along the sand, so small and perfect. I smoothed it with my hand, and as I always do, I had to take it for a sign. I had to listen for your presence in my mind. Didn't I show you? You said. I answered, Yes, you did. Then you will take to heart that light-filled vision. Your heaviness is like those clumps of snow disappearing, dense because they're melting. Take that feather and learn to fly sometime. Get ready to leave it all behind. Not that you're going anywhere, just being redefined. That's how I'll see you on the other side.
Mm. Poetry applause, the quiet, whispery poetry applause. I think everyone in the audience is quietly applauding. I love hearing these in your voice. It's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can you tell us a little bit about how that particular poem came to be?
Yeah, that sometimes I get a poem when I'm riding my bicycle and some lines will start coming and then it'll sort of cycle along and form itself as I ride. And as I was back at my mom's place and I had been there, that's where we went after Heather's passing, and I was back there and I was taking a ride to the beach. And certain lines started coming into my head and I thought, you know, if you follow those lines, you're going to cry. And I did anyway. And so then by the time I got to the beach, I was just sobbing. And the poem actually tells the story of exactly what happened. And because I was experiencing it, and then behind that, my mind was making this song. It was a song. It has a tune. You won't hear it from me. So then I got home and I wrote it, tears streaming down. But then, of course, there's always a kind of a cleansing feeling at the end. So that's how it.
Mm-hmm. So for those of you who may not know in the audience, Heather was one of my best friends, truly one of the great friendships of my life. And while I think themes of this book are pretty accessible to anyone, the book has been a great comfort to me, specifically having known Heather. And just sort of like you were mentioning, Wendy, reading through this collection, there are the peaceful, reflective poems interspersed with more stormy, tearful poems. Can you talk about the way that this collection is organized, and how it sort of reflects your grieving process?
Yeah, so the poems reflect as they track through my experience. And when I was in the state of just when they told me at the hospital that Heather was gone, but before they pulled the life support, I had, of course, the overwhelming grief. And there was another thing that was happening too, which was that I was delivered into a huge place I've never been in. I mean, I was in a small room, but this huge place, I called it the allness, and it was a place where I was aware of Heather's presence. I was aware of her as various lights darting around, but I was aware of her being in this same place where I was, this large, huge place where there was no death and where there was no suffering, or the only purpose of any kind of suffering was to kick out the false floor so that we would see how huge existence is. And so that afterwards, I would access that. I could access it sometimes. And so some of the poems reflect that transcendent place. And then other times I was just in the depths of sodden grief. And then the third type of poem you might find in there are the ones that reflect how difficult it is to come from this very altered, different world and try to put my feet back on the ground of real life, and the process of making steps towards doing that. So it's not entirely chronological, but there's a certain chronological nature in the way they're interspersed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear examples of some of these poems.
Okay, So here's the first poem that I wrote the next day after Heather's passing. It's called Going Through It. Wind-driven rain whips at the house. Rain falls through me in waves, in recurring torrents. I'm like a spring tree, my buds paused, my limbs wet, water following its path along my roots. I am not melting, though it may feel like it. The soil will receive all of this. My leaves will use it to open out and grow. And then this one from the place, the more transcendent place, is called Transparent. Well, I'm more transparent now. It seems like I've partway come with you into the place where these weights just fall through me, and the constraints of time and space and body don't apply, at least as much. This state of me is something I observe and ponder and curiously feel what it's like to be at least somewhat unbound by physics, to be caught up in different motivation, to move like light through my day. And then here's one about integrating with the present world. Mending. Family folds us in ways we didn't know we could expect. Nets of connection bear us up. Many arms embrace us. So the mending begins, of holes we mostly can't even see, things that must be obvious to others, places we are leaking. Why we seem to need to keep sleeping, simple tasks that seem impossible. At some time we will have to rise up and reassume our former mantles. But for now, we'll let ourselves be held, circled up in other people's care.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for reading those. So I think a poem that I really love from the collection is, and I think it sort of sits between grief and integration, maybe, but it's the titular poem, Time and Times and Half a Time. Can you talk about, well, actually, will you read that for us first?
Sure.
Thank you.
Time and Times and Half a Time. The heaping apple cart tips over. The rolling hopes and expectations jostle and fall, bounce along roads lost to us now. We can't even begin to gather them back, and the cart is broken anyway, one wheel following the apples down, careening and ringing like a coin. And it makes no sense to us to go back, to start over. What would it be to us at this point? So in the aftermath, we wait to be lifted, our lives to be born along a different arc.
Wonderful. So will you tell us where the title comes from?
Actually, it's a biblical reference. And there's a place in Revelation where Satan has just been cast out of heaven, but earth hasn't kind of figured it out yet. And so, and it says the woman is given 2 wings as a great eagle so she can fly away in the wilderness where she is nourished for a time and times and half a times from the face of the serpent. So it very much felt to me that it was an altered space where I needed nourishment from something that I didn't have at all. It was a wilderness. And there's another reason why I chose the title is that if you look at the idea of time, that's like time passing. The sense of that was shattered for me. You look at times as in experiences, that was shattered. And you can look at half a time as a life that was much too short. And so that's another part of the meaning of the title.
I mean, what an image, you know? And yeah, amazing. So I don't think that this book is necessarily just about Heather. I think the specificity of the experience reflected there gives it a kind of universalness for many people dealing with grief. But as someone who knew and knows Heather, I see her all over this book. Can you talk about her presence in the book and in the poems?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I would say it was less about remembering Heather than that it was about continuing to have a conversation with her. And I really felt and still feel like that I will, like in the very first poem that I read, she actually was talking to me. And I was at a total loss, and I felt for her presence. And she said, didn't I show you, to show you the beautiful place? And so I, at various times, have in these poems, they've been a kind of a conversation with Heather.
Mm-hmm. Is there a specific poem that kind of, I know you've already read one, but is there another one that sort of exemplifies that conversation?
Yeah, this one is called Still Talking to Heather. Here is a thing that is beautiful, your life and what it proved, what it establishes even now, that no one ever has to think their presence is expendable, their friendship unneeded or unwanted. You are here with your ready hug and your deep empathy, and you have showed us that no one needs to wait to love, and no one has to wait to be beloved. So we go back along the weaving of a life, the places in the past where strands have tangled. We pick them up and lay them back in place, gently and deftly, as your hands always moved. We set things right all along the years. We feel in doing this that you are here.
You read a killer last line. I'll say it always. So I know, because I have the book, but that the image on this page is a weave, and I can kind of hold this up. So maybe, or I can make myself completely invisible. There we go. And we have a question in the Q&A from Monica asking about the drawings. So Susanna, I happen to know that you did the drawings. Can you talk about your process for coming up with images for these poems?
In the beginning, when Wendy decided that I should do the illustrations, or she offered it to me, then we sat together and we went through the poems, and each one read the poem to herself, and then we kind of both shared what came up for us. And so it was sometimes Wendy's idea, sometimes my idea, put on paper. And if we didn't have an idea, sometimes the poems have beautiful feathers instead. But and there are quite a few feathers. But whenever we did not, sometimes I actually because it was 2020 and I was locked up like everybody else, it was actually the best thing for me to do, to be in the room and make these drawings. So it was just perfect. And I offered to do more drawings. So for those that we did not have talked about what to do, I basically read the poem, reread it, and then just felt what came up. And sometimes it was something very lighthearted. Sometimes it was very literal. And actually the literal of the poem, the literal meaning often was lighthearted, even though it had a deeper meaning behind it.
Here, I
Okay.
can share some of these, in fact. I think this is going to pop right up to a lighthearted one, in fact. So, oh, love this image.
That one, yeah.
Can you talk more about maybe the lighthearted aspect of creating this art?
In this case, it was, the poem was about falling out of soggy boxes. And, you know, to me, I just took it very literal. Mm-hmm. That's one of those where I just kind of, it kind of made me giggle, and it made me happy to see them fall out of the boxes. And I knew the land that they were building their house. So I kind of honed in on the land where they were landing. But in the meantime, between the soggy box, and the land, they were doing what everybody would be doing if they fall out of boxes. And the hair was flying, of course, and both have this curly hair.
So I can maybe show a couple more of these images.
Yeah, thunder. So this is where they feel.
There are a number of portraits of Heather in the book. Can you talk about your process of kind of capturing her?
Yeah, that was that actually surprised me myself, because yes, I had photos, but to really get that spirit, I should backtrack. I had met Heather only briefly. But you know, you always get more than just the visual. And then Wendy and we had talked over the poems a lot, and we had talked about Heather a lot. And I got the sense that of who Heather was. So when I looked at the photos, I picked up that part mostly of that image of who Heather was, her loving ways with everything and everyone.
Yeah,
no.
Here, let me. I love this one. Let's see.
And this one I think was Heather was looking out of a tent, I think, and she actually had only that one slot in that other image.
Oh yeah,
that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Here, so there we go. So Wendy, what was it like for you to work with an artist?
You know, working with Susanna was really wonderful, because the first time when we sat there, sometimes I had a picture in my mind of what it could look like. But if I tried to move it from a very rude sketch to something that would look like something to anyone else, I didn't have the skills. But I would, you know, scratch something out, and then here it would appear as a beautiful picture. And sometimes it would be something surprising, like the picture which you might have seen for the very first poem, where she has the person walking on the beach, which would have been me, kind of from the top down. And I hadn't thought of that. And when I saw it, it was like, oh, that works. So it really was a wonderful process. And yeah, I think Susanna was very intuitive, and it was, yeah, there's that picture where she's walking from the top.
Yeah. So I think that we were going to read one of the poems that goes along with one of the portraits of Heather. I believe it was Heather's Day.
Yeah.
So can I go ahead and bring that image back up and let you read, so we can sort of see how the images and the poetry reads together. So let's just go ahead and do this.
There it is. Oops.
There we go.
Heather's Day.
That one.
When I can remember how time turns out to be nothing at all, how the wholeness of you was complete before we knew you, continued so all throughout that span, and is so now. Then I can feel the joy of your being that touched so many moments and blessed so many hearts, so thoroughly then as now. And I can know a similar purpose attends each of us. Your light can still guide us there.
Beautiful.
And I love that picture. That's my mom. And Heather had just bought that blanket and she just spontaneously wrapped her up in it.
Wonderful. So just a quick reminder to all of you in the audience, in a few minutes, we will be taking questions. So if you have any questions for Wendy or Susanna, please throw those in Q&A. We always want to hear from you. We'd love to know what you think. So let's see. When I was reading this collection, I found myself very much still in conversation with some of these poems. Wendy, is that true for you as well? Do you look back and are you still affected by the poems in this book?
In a way I am. I really hope that the poems give comfort to other people. And when I see people reading them and being comforted, it really touches my heart that way. The other truth is that this process of learning what I've needed to learn has been ongoing, and those are tracks that I made, those poems, and I'm still walking. So I don't exactly tend to go back and dwell on them because where I am with my process is newer. Although there is one poem in there that I wrote almost a year after I wrote all the other ones, which actually illustrates that. Do we have time?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay. This is called To Heather. My song sparrow, my thrush, my swallow, may your sweet voice carry on the wind. May you swoop in sheer delight in concert with your kin. Since you took off, I've been trudging up this path, sometimes caught up in overwhelming beauty, often looking down and thinking it should be so easy to just leap off and fly among these vistas. But I walk, there's plenty here, and nothing else to do but keep on climbing. One of these days I'll catch the peak, and then we'll see you maybe in that transfigured place where you have flown.
Beautiful. So we're sort of inching towards the end of our time together. And I would love to ask about one of my favorite images in the book, the image that accompanies the last poem in the book, which is called The Choir of Heaven, which I would love to hear. And I would love to hear about the process of creating this image. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. And Wendy, if you will read it.
Yeah.
And so we can sort of see it because this is really amazing. Here's the image. I wish I could scroll in, alas.
Oh, well, here we go. The Choir of Heaven. To bring in range the choir of heaven, consider what it means that there be no more death, not now or ever, that the whole veil be drawn away and we perceive that no one and nothing has ever died. If there has been no loss of loved ones or of wisdom or of life experience, of ancient ways of knowing, of lessons dearly learned, of birds and animals, of fish, of trees, of anyone who loved them. That whole choir of ancestors and children and newly resurrected hope would fill the realm of home, would fill infinity. Yes, I will be there too. And yes, I too will sing.
Oh, it's such a celebration of a poem, and it's such a celebration of an image as well. Susanna, can you talk about how this image came to be?
This image is probably the most intuitive in the whole collection of images of that book. I had been sitting on wanting to draw it, and I didn't know quite what. I had the top, the singing choir, I had them all figured out, and then one day it just spurted, it just came out. I just had a pencil in my hand, and I saw it again on the paper. It was an amazing process. It was, I mean, I can only say it was intuitive. I just wanted everyone and everything, as it says in the poem, to go on up there to sing in that choir. Fish and all.
Yeah, and mice and sheep.
Sheep and lots of kids, because, and chickens. I love chickens. So, but they're all going up there. And I try to do 2 of each at least, but it didn't always work. I ran out of space. I simply ran out of space on that page. And it was a very fun process to draw.
Scott says, I see turtles. I know, it's so fun to, yeah. So we are definitely heading towards audience questions. So start thinking of questions that you would like to ask our author and illustrator tonight. My sort of last question before we switch over to that is, this is a book about grief and loss. And I think that can kind of make people suspect that it may be a downer a little bit. But there is so much light that exists in this collection. Wendy, can you talk about the light that is in this book?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing secret. And one of the things, when they knew that we had lost our daughter, especially parents would say, oh, I can't imagine. And it's true that they can't imagine the very exceeding depth of it. But the other thing that people maybe don't know to imagine is that underneath the bottom of the deepest loss is that which holds us up, this amazing light. And when you go down to the very, very bottom of it and you find out that this light is here, then it's a sustaining thing. And it really, for me, it was also part of why just living my life as a normal person was no longer possible, because I had seen this thing that's real, this light, and every part of my continual, often struggling, searching path since then has been to understand that light and bring it out more. So I hope, and I feel that some of the poems managed to capture that, and that's why there's light in the book.
Yeah, I think so. So we have a few questions here. This is an interesting question from Therese, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your names. But Therese says, Wendy, do you go to the I am place you talked about all the time when you write these poems, or are there other places you find yourself in? And do you still experience an altered sense of time?
Good questions. So I do not always go. I mean, I'm always trying to be in the I am as much as I can, but I'm dedicated to honesty about where I find myself. And sometimes I find myself in a place that's really more reflecting the human experience of myself as a trudging human in this world. And if that's the honest place, that's what I have to write, because there's no pretending. You can't pretend the I am. I would say, as far as that sense of the veil and the transparency, the altered state, I think that I'm a lot more down to earth than I was then. That it's very important for me to feel my feet on the ground, and I feel that sometimes that sense of the allness comes through my feet through the ground. It's a process of integrating. But I think I still find that altered state sometimes. I think it comes around again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Therese also says, the drawings also add a sense of softening and healing, which I think is really true. I think that the medium, especially of those drawings, really adds something to the spirit of the book. So Scott says, let's see, it's sort of similar to what you've already been talking about, but asks if through this loss there has been something gained.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's true. Really, you find out that life is about discovering what's true, and there's so many ways that we can experience discovering it, and I think you can't help but discovering it. You don't have to have a horrible loss. Thank goodness. But if you do, then that discovery is there. And I think life is a forward progress process, both of those words. So, yeah.
So if anybody has questions, I'm going to leave a couple of moments just to put those in the Q&A here. In the meantime, I'm going to go and grab a link to the book real quick and set that in the chat. So if you would like to go get more information about this book or where you can find it, that will be in chat here in 3, 2, 1. And I'm not seeing any more questions coming up. So I will ask a quick, oh, I lied to you. Oh, here we go. This is a great question. Thanks, Melissa. How much editing did you do of the poems when compiling the book? Are they the exact originals that you first wrote, or have they been edited in retrospect?
I think it's very, very close to the same. There might have been like a preposition I changed somewhere or something, which I couldn't tell you which it was, but no, I didn't. I don't edit my poems very often at all, because I just write a new one instead. So yeah, they're pretty close to the same, and you could find that if you look on my blog and look up the poem, if you want to see if I added a comma or something like
that. So Sherry is asking, did writing this lighten the burden of grief? And I would add to that question, or is writing the book more of a reflection of the grief?
You know, I think that it's both of those things, because in my poems, I've found that whenever I nail the truth, I feel better. Even without feeling horrible, when I get done, I feel better if I nailed the truth. So that's my life, that it will lighten things to write poems, and it also is a reflection. So
So hi, Lise. Lise is asking, how did you two meet? How did this this art poetry connection begin?
Oh, well, you know, it actually was when my husband and I were looking for our house. We stayed at Susanna's place that she had at the time that was a retreat center. And we met there and I shared my poetry, and Susanna was one of the people who just makes my heart feel so good because she totally related to it and just loved it. And she wrote back to me saying that it was resonating with her in a big way. And so then, of course, I love Susanna because she has speaking to my heart. And so then we continued to know each other and went through various, Susanna had a tough experience that she went through that I was around, and but we were sort of, she was coming into her own. She's been an artist all the time, but starting to say, okay, I'm not putting it off anymore. I'm being an artist now. I could relate to that. And so it was kind of natural to think of her as a possibility for doing the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
I love
Can I add something to it?
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, it was, I mean, for me, it was amazing to be asked if I wanted to illustrate it. Of course I did. And, but then in our conversations, we actually realized that we shared a lot of our more metaphysical beliefs or views about the all. I had an experience as a early on in childhood that had opened up a lot for me, and so I could really, that also helped me understand the poems and what would be a good illustration for it. So there was a good connection right there. Also, I really want to say that it was an amazing process to work with Wendy, because we had a good understanding. Mm-hmm. And I knew Wendy and Edward from finding, helping. No, I didn't help them find. They found their land, but being there and seeing the whole process, and they, you know, even though it was such an incredible event, life-changing event to lose Heather, they are very happy people. Mm-hmm. It strikes me often how much mm-hmm. laughter there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So, Joan says, do you have any sense that experiencing death of a close loved one is similar among different bereaved people? Is there a sort of universalness of experience?
You know, I really wonder that. I think that I have a few friends who have lost children and who have, like Therese, who's asked earlier, and we have noticed some similarities. I certainly haven't made a study of it, but a handful of people I know, I think there probably is some common ground at least.
Mm-hmm. And then I think that this is a wonderful ending question. Oh, Cheryl is asking, Wendy, when did you start writing?
Well, I started doing my poetry blog in January of 2011. Mm-hmm. I started finding my voice as a writer maybe in 2006, I'm guessing, ish. And I had tried to be a writer as a young person and as a young adult, but could never really find my voice. But I did write poems from the time that I was 7. So,
so I would say always, yeah. So Melissa is asking the same question that I was about to ask. Do either of you have any new creative projects on the horizon that we should know about?
Well, I'm writing a prose book called The Compelling Argument. Changes everything. Susanna thinks it's very dense. But Alex sort of believed what I said.
Yeah, I liked it. I've read, I think, what husband sent me, and I liked it. So yeah, keep an eye on the blog for when that shows up. I'm going to be your salesperson, Wendy, if you're not going to do it yourself. Go ahead and check out the blog. I already linked it, but I will link it again just in case you're not scrolling. But if you go and follow Wendy's blog, you'll keep up to date with what is going on in her life. Susanna, do you have a similar place where we can find you?
I have my art website. Yeah.
Ooh, where is that?
It is. Are you gonna write
I
it
am.
or?
I'm gonna find it right now.
Susanna. Yeah. It's Susanna-Maria-artist.com.
All right. I'm throwing that in chat. Oh my gosh. These are beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So everyone go click on that. I'm glad that I saw it.
Yeah.
So
I'm really I'm much more into painting at this point, but drawing was a real great thing for 2020 and 21. Yeah.
All right. So thank you, audience members, for these wonderful questions. This has been such a delight. We're sort of coming, let's see, we have one more question coming in at the tail. This is from Lori. How have you managed to find joy again? And I'm so glad you did.
Well, you know, that experience of the allness that I had gave me a way to start to tune into it. And so I could find it, and it would be like this place of peace that was sort of floating, you know, I was sort of floating in that. And gradually, I mean, it was work, it was practice to find that sense of the light in the ground, in the land where I was, which helped a lot. I mean, it's been therapeutic to be out on a piece of bare land, doing very hard work and living very rustically. But just finding it come up and seeing it come up in daily life. We were isolated a lot, and then we would go into town and I would just see it in everybody's faces, just the light, and that brought it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I thought that we should end the evening with a poem. And I'm hoping you will read us one of my favorites, which is called Mother's Day. Will you read that for us?
Sure. Mother's Day. A rose may be shared, as also perhaps a child, or at least the ties of motherhood. This didn't come out as we expected, did it, my love? But no matter. It can be another thing we laugh about together. You, me, your dad, your brother. We'll all have a good laugh at this next time we get together, next time we take a walk along the beach.
Okay, I managed not to get too emotional until the last poem. That one always gets me. So thank you, everyone. We're about at the end of our time. I just want to reach a huge, huge thank you to all of you who have come and joined us this evening. This has been such a wonderful night. If you would like to get copies of the book, I'm going to link that one more time. Come on in. I would love it if you came in and said hi. Let us know what you thought of this event. It would be so good to see you. Hugs back, Kathy and Lise. And I think, Wendy and Susanna, do you have any last things you'd like to say before we say goodnight?
I just want to say thanks so much for everyone who came and listened. And if you're dealing with loss, I really wish you the strength and the light of it to get through. And if you have loved ones dealing with loss, then your light is a comfort to them. And so glad of your being. And also thanks so much, Allie, for putting this together.
My absolute, always my pleasure. All right. Well,
Yeah, thank you everyone for appreciating.
Wonderful. I love to see this chat blowing up. I hate to put an end to it, but I think that this is the evening. So with that, shall we do some waving? Good night, everyone.
Good night.